This story is titled, My Parents Blamed Me for Theft for Years, Destroying My Trust. Now, the real culprit's arrest left them begging for forgiveness. Hey everyone, this is something that happened to me years ago. But guess what? My family decided to drag it back into the spotlight recently, so here I am, putting it out there. I've been sitting on this story for so long, and honestly, I still don't even know how to process it. Alright, so here's the deal. I'm 23 now. But this story starts when I was 15, and man, it still messes with my head sometimes. I'm the middle child, sandwiched between my older sister Sarah and my younger brother Liam. Sarah was 17 at the time, always doing the right thing type. She was every parent's dream, responsible, ambitious, the whole 9 yards. Liam was 11, and as the youngest, he was the golden child. He could do no wrong in their eyes, always getting a free pass on everything. And then there was me, the middle kid, just trying to stay out of trouble and make my own way. My parents always said they were all about fairness. You know, dividing things equally, making sure we each got the same opportunities. But looking back, that idea of fairness was just smoke and mirrors. They treated Sarah like the future CEO of the family, Liam like the baby they needed to protect, and me like, well, just there. Not bad enough to be a problem, but not good enough to shine either. Now my dad had this collection. He wasn't into stamps or coins like some people. It was pocket knives, baseball cards, and a few autographed baseballs. He had a whole shelf in his bedroom dedicated to these things, like some kind of shrine. He'd tell stories about where each item came from, how much effort he put into getting them, or what they were worth. It wasn't my thing, but hey, he loved it. Some of the stuff was valuable too. Not crazy money, but enough that he was proud of it. But things from his collection started to disappear. The first thing that went missing was a pocket knife. It wasn't just any knife, it was his favorite. He'd shown it to me before, going on about how it had a unique design and how he'd traded with a collector to get it. One morning, he noticed it was gone. At first, it was just a mild annoyance. He thought he misplaced it or maybe left it somewhere. But then, a week later, one of his baseball cards disappeared, and then another knife. It didn't take long for him to start getting suspicious. He asked all of us about it, me, Sarah, and Liam. I didn't think much of it at first because, honestly, why would I care? I told him straight up, I haven't seen it. Sarah and Liam said the same, but something about the way he looked at me felt off, like he didn't believe me. Then came the day everything changed. He found one of his missing knives in my room. I'll never forget it. He barged in, holding the knife like it was evidence in a courtroom. "Why is this in here?" he demanded. I just froze. I had no clue how it got there. I told him, "I don't know. It's not mine." But he wasn't buying it. "Don't play dumb," he said. "This is my knife. What's it doing in your room?" From that moment on, I was under a microscope. Every time something went missing, it was automatically my fault. It didn't matter what I said or how much I denied it. They'd already made up their minds. The thing is, I genuinely had no idea how that knife got there. To this day, I don't know if Liam planted it or if it somehow ended up there by accident. But that didn't matter to my parents. To them, the fact that it was in my room was all the proof they needed. And it wasn't just my parents. They started talking about it with the rest of the family. My grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone knew. Every time we had a family gathering, it felt like I was under a spotlight. People made comments, sometimes subtle, sometimes not. My uncle once said, "Better keep an eye on your wallet around him," and laughed like it was a joke. My grandma would give me these looks like she couldn't believe I'd turned out this way. At school, things weren't much better. My mom told one of her friends what was going on, and that friend happened to be the mother of a kid I went to school with. You can guess what happened next. It spread like wildfire. Suddenly, kids were whispering about me in the hallways. I'd hear things like, "Isn't he the one who stole from his dad?" I kept my head down, but it wasn't easy. I mean, how do you prove you didn't do something? The more I denied it, the guiltier I looked. It felt like I was trapped in this game where no matter what I did, I couldn't win. Liam, on the other hand, seemed totally unbothered by the whole thing. He was always in the background, playing his games, doing his homework, acting like the innocent kid he was supposed to be. Sarah stayed neutral, not wanting to get involved, which hurt in its own way. I thought maybe she'd stick up for me, but she didn't. She just kept her distance, like the whole thing was beneath her. The worst part wasn't even the accusations. It was the way it made me feel about myself. I started to doubt everything. I'd keep replaying every interaction in my head, trying to figure out if I'd done something to deserve this. I even wondered if I was somehow stealing in my sleep or forgetting about it. I know how crazy that sounds, but when everyone around you treats you like a thief, it messes with your head. My parents kept saying, "We're just trying to help you learn from your mistakes." But what mistakes? I didn't do anything. At least, I didn't think I did. The lines between what I knew and what they believed started to blur. I began to isolate myself. I stopped hanging out with friends because I didn't want to answer questions about why I couldn't go out or why I looked so stressed all the time. I stayed in my room as much as possible, trying to avoid my parents and their endless questions. What else have you taken? Are you lying about this too? It never stopped. By the end of that year, I felt like I was a stranger in the house. I didn't trust my parents, my siblings, or even myself. All I wanted was for someone, anyone, to believe me, but that wasn't going to happen. So, after my dad found that knife in my room, things went from bad to worse. It was like I'd officially been branded as the thief, and there was no coming back from it. My parents decided they needed to teach me some kind of lesson, and let me tell you, they were not playing around. A few weeks later, things kept disappearing. One of the autographed baseballs was missing, and this wasn't just any ball. It was signed by his all-time favorite player, the one he always bragged about. I heard him yell from his room, "Where the hell is it?" My stomach dropped. I was sitting on my bed, already tense, and when I heard the anger in his voice, I started shaking. I didn't even know why I was nervous. I hadn't done anything wrong, but I couldn't stop the panic from creeping in. I heard heavy footsteps coming toward my room, and I knew what was coming next. My door flew open, and there he was, holding the empty display case like it was some kind of smoking gun. "You've got 5 seconds to tell me where it is," he snapped. I stammered, trying to say I didn't have it, but he cut me off. "Don't lie to me again. I've had enough of your crap." His voice boomed so loud I thought the walls might crack. I could barely get a word in before he started tearing through my room like a tornado. "First the knife, now this? What else have you taken? Is there anything in this house I can trust you not to steal?" He was opening drawers, throwing my clothes on the floor, ripping my backpack apart, even checking under my bed. I just stood there, shaking and trying not to cry. When he didn't find the ball, he only got angrier. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he shouted, pointing his finger at me like I was a criminal caught red-handed. "Hiding it somewhere I won't find it. Well, guess what? You're not going to get away with it this time." At that point, my mom walked in, but instead of calming him down, she joined in. "Where is it?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusing. "We've given you chance after chance, and this is how you repay us?" When they left me alone in my room, I started questioning myself. What if they were right? What if I was taking things without realizing it? I mean, how else could the stuff keep disappearing? Maybe I was sleepwalking or had some kind of memory problem. I even started Googling things like unconscious stealing and memory lapses, trying to figure out if there was something wrong with me. It sounds ridiculous now, but back then, I was desperate for an explanation. If I couldn't trust my family to believe me, how was I supposed to trust myself? That night, they sat me down and laid out new rules for me, which was their way of saying my life was about to get even worse. At first, it was little things, grounding me for a couple of days, or taking away my TV privileges. But as more stuff went missing, the punishments got way more intense. They started grounding me for weeks at a time. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere, not to a friend's house, not to the park, not even to walk around the block. They took my phone and sell my computer. I wasn't even allowed to read the books I liked because, according to them, privileges had to be earned back. It didn't stop there. My dad had this thing where he'd assign me chores as part of my discipline, but these weren't normal chores like taking out the trash or cleaning my room. He'd come up with stuff just to make my life miserable. He made me scrub the garage floor with a brush, by hand, because that's what happens when you disrespect other people's property. My mom wasn't any better. She'd make these passive-aggressive comments every chance she got. If I asked for something as simple as a snack, she'd say stuff like, "Oh, so now you're asking permission? How nice of you." Or, "Haven't you taken enough from this family already?" It was constant, and after a while, it started getting to me. I felt like they held too much hate towards me, not just angry at me for the missing stuff, hated me. Looking back now, I can't wrap my head around it. How could parents treat their own kid like that over something so small? It wasn't like they were losing thousands of dollars or priceless heirlooms. It was a knife here, a baseball there. Stuff that, honestly, wasn't even worth all this drama. But the way they acted, you'd think I had ruined their lives. The resentment they held toward me was so obvious, and it cut deep. And let's not forget about Liam and Sarah. Liam just sat back and watched, never saying a word. He'd be playing his games or watching TV while I was stuck scrubbing the baseboards or reorganizing the pantry. Sarah, on the other hand, acted like the whole thing didn't exist. She stayed in her room most of the time, barely acknowledging what was happening. I guess that was her way of staying out of the drama, but it felt like a betrayal. After that, they decided to cancel my birthday. I was supposed to get my driver's license when I turned 16 like any kid, but they said I hadn't earned their trust yet. No party, no presents, Not even a happy birthday. It was just another day where I got treated like a criminal in my own house. Bearing their constant punishments, I had enough. I tried talking to my parents about it once. I told them how hard it was being treated like this, how it felt like they were punishing me for something I didn't do. My dad's response? If you don't like it, maybe you shouldn't have taken things that didn't belong to you. My mom just nodded along, like that was the end of the conversation. What really got to me, though, was the inconsistency. One minute, my mom would act like she was trying to help me turn things around, and the next, she'd be telling me how disappointed she was in me. My dad would do the same thing, acting like he was trying to teach me some valuable life lesson, but really just finding new ways to make me feel like a failure. After a while, I stopped trying to fight back. What was the point? No matter what I said, they wouldn't believe me. I thought maybe if I kept my head down and did what they wanted, things would get better. By the time I turned 17, I wasn't the same person I used to be. The constant accusations, punishments, and isolation had done a number on me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of trying to explain myself. Tired of hoping things would get better. And tired of feeling like the black sheep of my own family. What happened to me at 15 stayed with me as I grew older, shaping how I saw myself and the world around me. Even now, I catch myself doubting my own worth, questioning whether I deserve the good things in my life, or waiting for the other shoe to drop, even when things are going well. It's like the version of me that got crushed by their mistrust, never fully recovered. My parents didn't treat me like a son anymore. They treated me like a problem they were stuck with. Every interaction with them felt like they were just waiting for me to screw up again. My dad would barely even look at me unless it was to yell or question me about something that had gone wrong. He acted like every mistake, no matter how small, was proof that I couldn't be trusted. If I forgot to do a chore or left something out of place, he'd snap, "Of course. You can't even do this right." My mom wasn't any better. She'd stopped trying to hide her disappointment in me altogether. Anytime she spoke to me, it was either to lecture me about responsibility or to remind me of how much I'd let them down. She had this way of sighing every time I walked into the room, like just seeing me there was enough to ruin her day. Even when I tried to avoid them, it wasn't enough. If I stayed in my room too long, she'd come in and say, "You're not going to hide away forever. That's not how you fix things." But when I did try to engage, it only gave them more chances to remind me how much they didn't trust me. They also stopped giving me any benefit of the doubt. If something went missing, even something small like a pair of scissors or a pack of batteries, the blame automatically landed on me. My dad would say, "Let me guess, you have no idea where it went," with that tone that made it clear he thought I was lying. It didn't matter how many times I denied it or how logical my argument was. They'd already decided I was guilty. The worst part was the constant anxiety. Every sound in the house made me jump, like I was always waiting for the next explosion, the next accusation. I'd catch myself panicking over the smallest things, like leaving my room a mess or accidentally knocking something over. Even when I wasn't being yelled at, my brain would convince me that I was about to be. It was like walking on a tightrope, except I didn't know when or if I'd fall. It's weird how quickly you adapt to stuff, even when it's unfair. I stopped expecting fairness or even kindness from my parents. Instead, I just kept my head down and tried to avoid any situation where they might start another fight. I'd stay in my room most of the time, only coming out when I had to eat or do one of the endless chores they assigned me. So, fast forward a few years. I'm 23 now, living on my own, doing my thing. I moved out right after I turned 18 and never looked back. I'd barely talked to my family since then. Maybe a quick text here or there during the holidays, but that was it. For the most part, I kept my distance. Then, one random afternoon, my phone rang. It was my mom. Honestly, I almost didn't pick up. We hadn't had a real conversation in years, and I wasn't in the mood to fake a polite chat, but something told me to answer, so I did. Right away, I knew something was off. Her tone wasn't the usual casual I was used to. It was hesitant, almost shaky. "Hi, sweetie," she started. "I hope you're doing well. I need to talk to you about something." I didn't say much, just a quick, "What's up?" because I honestly had no idea where this was going. That's when she hit me with it. "Things have been going missing again," she said. I sat up straighter. "Missing? Like what?" She listed off a bunch of things. Some of my dad's collectibles, cash from their wallets, and even my mom's jewelry. It was a lot more serious than the stuff from years ago. "But," she continued, "this time we knew we had to be sure before we accused anyone." That's when I realized where this was headed. I swear my heart stopped for a second. Were they about to drag me back into this mess? Were they seriously calling me to blame me for stuff I wasn't even there to take? But then she said something that threw me. "Your dad set up cameras in the house," she said. "And we caught Liam, my younger brother." the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I couldn't even process what she was saying at first. Wait, what? I finally managed to get out. She went on to explain. They'd installed cameras in the hallway leading to their bedroom, and sure enough, they caught Liam sneaking into my dad's room late at night. He'd been taking stuff and hiding it in Sarah's old bedroom. Apparently, he'd been at it for years, probably even back when I was still living there. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. On one hand, I felt vindicated. All those years of being accused, punished, humiliated, it wasn't me. It was never me. But on the other hand, I was furious. Furious that it had taken them so long to figure it out. Furious that they'd let it go this far and left me with a trauma that I deal with until this day. My mom kept talking, apologizing, and trying to explain. She said she and my dad felt awful for how they'd treated me. We should have believed you, she said. We were wrong and we're so sorry. Sorry. That's what she said. Like one word could magically erase years of being treated like garbage. Then she said, we want you to come to my birthday dinner next week. It would mean a lot to us if we could see you and talk about this in person. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, gripping my phone, trying to decide whether to hang up or let her finish. Eventually, I said I'd think about it and ended the call. After I hung up, my mind was spinning. All these years, they'd made me feel like I was broken, like I was a liar and a thief. And now they wanted me to just show up for a nice family dinner and let bygones be bygones? I wasn't sure what to do. Part of me wanted to tell them to shove their apology where the sun doesn't shine. But another part of me, maybe the part that still craved some kind of closure, wanted to hear them out. A couple of days later, my dad, Mark, called me. That was a surprise because he's never been the type to admit when he's wrong. He started off with the usual small talk, asking how I was doing, how work was going. Then he got to the point. I just want to say I'm sorry, he said. I messed up. We messed up. We should have trusted you. Hearing those words from him felt strange. For years, he'd been the one who came down hardest on me, the one who made sure I felt the weight of every punishment. And now here he was, admitting he was wrong. But then he said something that really threw me. We're going to make it up to you. We're planning something special, and I think you'll like it. I asked what he meant, but he just said, you'll see, and left it at that. In the days leading up to my mom's birthday, I kept going back and forth on whether I should go. I didn't want to forgive them. Not yet, anyway. But I was curious to see what they had to say, what they were willing to do to make things right. At the same time, I couldn't shake the anger. All those years, they'd treated me like a criminal while Liam got away with everything. And now that the truth was out, they expected a quick apology to fix everything? It wasn't that simple. When the day of the dinner came, I still hadn't made up my mind. I thought about texting my mom to say I wasn't coming, but something stopped me. Maybe I wanted to see if they were serious about making amends. Or maybe I just wanted to hear them say it to my face. Either way, I decided to go. So, I showed up to my mom's birthday dinner, and let me tell you, I wasn't exactly thrilled to be there. I hadn't seen most of my family in years, and now I was supposed to sit at the same table with them, like everything was fine. The dinner was at some fancy restaurant, the kind of place my parents wouldn't normally go to, unless it was for something big. My mom greeted me at the door like nothing had ever happened. I'm so glad you came, she said, smiling like she didn't spend years treating me like a thief. My dad was already at the table, giving me this awkward nod, which I guess was his version of being apologetic. The first half hour was weird. My parents tried to keep things light, small talk, asking about work, pretending they cared about my life now. Liam was there too, sitting at the other end of the table, looking like he wished he was anywhere else. I didn't even bother making eye contact with him. But the whole vibe changed when one of my cousins, Emily, decided to stir the pot. She's the type who can't resist making a scene, and this dinner was no exception. Out of nowhere, she says, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Better keep an eye on your wallets, everyone. You know how things tend to go missing around here. I swear the whole restaurant went silent. My dad tried to laugh it off like it was a harmless joke, but I wasn't having it. I leaned forward, staring straight at her, and said, Don't worry, Emily. I'm sure your boyfriends say the same thing about you when they're comparing notes. Yeah, it was harsh. Maybe too harsh. But I wasn't in the mood to play nice and bearing her bullshit. Emily's face turned bright red, and she started tearing up. Her dad, my Uncle Mike, jumped in immediately. That's enough, he said, glaring at me. You've got no right to talk to her like that, especially after everything you've put this family through. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What I've put this family through, I shot back. Are you serious right now? After all the crap I went through because you people couldn't figure out who the real thief was? You're still blaming me? Mike doubled down, saying something about family harmony, and how I should be more respectful. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, looked right at my parents, and said, "This is what you created. You turned me into the family scapegoat, and now you expect me to just sit here and take it? Forget it." Then I walked out. I didn't even make it to my car before my dad caught up to me. "Wait," he said, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. "You don't have to apologize for what just happened. That wasn't your fault." I stopped and stared at him. "You're damn right it wasn't my fault. But what are you going to do about it?" He didn't have an answer. He just stood there, looking uncomfortable. "We're trying to fix things," he finally said. "We really are." I didn't respond. I just got in my car and drove home. A couple of days later, Sarah called me. She hadn't been at the dinner, which wasn't surprising since she'd been living in another state and barely visited. "Mom told me what happened," she said, "and for what it's worth, I think you handled it better than I would have." Sarah's always been the level-headed one, but hearing her side with me felt good. She told me Liam had finally confessed to everything. Not just the recent thefts, but the stuff from years ago too. According to Sarah, my mom had a complete meltdown when she found out. "She's been crying for days," Sarah said. "She feels awful about how she treated you." Good. She should feel awful. But that didn't mean I was ready to forgive her. Later that week, my mom called again. This time, she sounded more desperate than apologetic. "We want to make this right," she said. "Your dad and I are selling some of our things to help pay off your student loans, and we're planning to get you a new car. It's the least we can do." I told her straight up, "I don't want your money, and I don't want your car. You can't buy your way out of this." She started crying again, but I didn't care. For years, I'd been treated like the family screw-up, and now they thought a few expensive gifts would make me forget about it? Not a chance. But things shifted when Liam got arrested. He'd stolen my grandpa's truck and crashed it into a streetlight about 2 miles from their house. The truck was totaled, and my grandparents were furious. They kicked him out and refused to let him come back until he paid for the damage. My parents canceled Liam's college fund to help cover the costs. That's when I found out they'd planned to use part of that money to buy me the car they'd been talking about. The irony was almost funny. When my dad called to tell me about it, he sounded more defeated than I'd ever heard him. "We've made so many mistakes," he said. "I don't expect you to forgive us, but I hope you'll at least let us try to make things right." I didn't know what to say. I kind of wanted to believe him, to give them a chance to fix things. But the other part of me, the part that had spent years being blamed, punished, and humiliated, wasn't ready to let it go. I told him I'd think about it, but deep down, I already knew my answer. After everything that happened, the dinner, the arguments, the endless calls from my parents, I was done. Done with the apologies, done with their guilt trips, and done pretending like this was something that could be fixed. I gave it a lot of thought over the next few weeks. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd feel that pit in my stomach, knowing it was probably my mom or dad trying to check in again. I didn't answer most of the time. What was the point? They always said the same things. "We're sorry. We're trying to make things right. We just want to move forward." But none of it felt real. Here's the thing. Apologies don't undo years of damage, especially damage caused by the family. They don't erase the humiliation, the self-doubt, or the complete breakdown of trust. My parents seemed to think that acknowledging they were wrong would magically fix everything, but it doesn't work like that. Sarah, my sister, called me one night to check in. She's the only one I still feel like I can talk to, and even though she didn't always have my back when we were younger, I know she gets it now. "You don't owe them anything," she said. "If you're not ready to forgive them, that's okay. Do what's best for you." That stuck with me. I'd spent so much time trying to figure out what they wanted, what they needed, that I hadn't stopped to think about what I wanted. And what I wanted was peace. A week later, I got another call from my dad. This time, he wasn't making excuses or trying to guilt me into forgiving him. He sounded tired, almost defeated. "Liam's still being held," he said. "The charges for stealing the truck and the damage he caused are serious. Your grandparents are refusing to help, and honestly, I can't blame them." He went on to explain that they'd decided not to intervene this time. "He needs to face the consequences," my dad admitted. "Maybe this will finally wake him up. We've tried everything else, and it clearly hasn't worked." There was a heaviness in his voice, like he couldn't believe it had come to this. He shifted the conversation back to me. "We're trying to rebuild the family," he said. "We want you to be part of that process. We'll do whatever it takes to make things right with you." I didn't say much in response. I just let him talk. When he finished, I said, "I'm glad you're trying to fix things, but I'm not ready to be a part of it. I need time. Maybe a lot of it." He sighed. "I understand," he said. "Just know that the door is always open if you change your mind." Around the same time, my mom sent me a long email. It was the first time she'd really put everything into words, and I could tell she meant it. She apologized for the years of mistrust, for not defending me, for letting things get as bad as they did. She admitted that they'd failed as parents, and that they didn't know how to make up for it. I appreciated the effort, but the damage was already done. I'd spent years trying to make them see me for who I really was. And now that they finally did, it didn't change the fact that they'd already broken me. The truth is, I don't know if I'll ever forgive them. Do I let go of all the anger and move forward? I honestly feel like I've been so much better off without their constant drama. Since leaving, I've built a life for myself that felt lighter, freer, and honestly, more at peace. I don't know how they crawled back to my life again. I'm exhausted just thinking about going back into that dynamic, even if they're trying to change. For now, I'm staying where I am, on my own, figuring out what I really want. I'll keep you all updated if anything changes, but for now, this is where I'm at. Final update. Hey everyone, it's been a while since I last shared what was happening, and things have taken a turn. After everything that's gone on with my family, I finally hit my breaking point. So, Liam ended up getting out of his arrest. My parents apparently scraped together enough to help him post bail, and the court let him off with probation, since it was his first major offense. But even though he's out, he's still in trouble. Sarah told me that he's staying with our grandparents, but they're keeping him on a tight leash. He has to get a job, pay them rent, and follow strict rules to prove he's growing up. You'd think after all of that, he might show some remorse or try to change, but no. According to Sarah, Liam's been sneaking money from my parents' emergency savings account to buy video games and snacks. It's not as dramatic as stealing a truck, but it's enough to make me realize that nothing has changed. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but compare. I was cast out for years over something I didn't even do, and here they were bending over backward to give Liam chance after chance. When it came to me, their solution was to treat me like dirt until I left. But for Liam, they couldn't bear to cut him off, no matter how much damage he caused. That's when I made my decision. I sat down one night and wrote out a message to my parents. I kept it short and direct. No long explanations, no arguments, just the truth. I basically sent, I appreciate the effort you've made to apologize and make things right. I really do. But the truth is, I don't think I can ever fully trust you again. The way you treated me for all those years, assuming the worst, punishing me, isolating me, it's something I can't just forget. I need to move on with my life, and that means cutting ties for now. Maybe someday I'll feel differently, but right now, I need space. Please don't contact me anymore. I'll reach out if and when I'm ready. Take care. Sarah called me the next day, and I told her what I'd done. She didn't judge me or try to talk me out of it. I get it, she said. You have to do what's right for you. That was the most validating thing I'd heard in a long time. Liam never reached out. Not that I expected him to. From what Sarah told me, he's been acting like nothing is his fault, which doesn't surprise me one bit. It's just who he is. It's been a few months now since I sent that message, and honestly, I feel good about my decision. Cutting ties wasn't easy, but it was necessary. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe. I've been focusing on my own life. It's not perfect, but it's mine, and that's what matters. My parents still have a lot of work to do if they ever want a real shot at rebuilding our relationship. Saying sorry isn't enough. They'll have to prove they've changed, and I'm not holding my breath. For now, I'm done being the scapegoat, the target, or the project they think they need to fix. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to heal, and for me, it was the only choice I had left. Thanks for sticking with me through this, and I'll let you know if there are any updates in the future. For now, I'm focusing on living my life drama-free.